As the Nashville Predators close the book on the 2023-24 season, we'll look at the highs and lows of the team in a special season-ending plus-minus on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Such an uplifting intro. Hi, everybody. Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Locked On Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I want to start out with a special shout out to our loyal Locked On Pred heads out there, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you guys and appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio.
A lot to get to on today's show. The Nashville Predators season, of course, it's over now. Locker room cleanout scheduled for today. So we'll have some of the storylines and quotes on tomorrow's show. But for today, we'll look back at a special plus minus recapping the highs and lows of this past Nashville Predators season. A season, I think, Ann, of a lot of successes, but also one that you look at and say maybe some missed opportunities and maybe some doubt about where this team is moving forward as well.
Yeah, it's easy to pull out the things to celebrate, and I think there definitely are huge steps that the Nashville Predators took. But I do think it's important to take a minute and look at some of the things that Nashville's going to need to address in the offseason. And what, for our listeners, is going to be so great about today's plus minus is it's also going to serve as sort of a menu for a lot of the topics that we're going to dive into deeper through the offseason. So if you hear something and you amen and hallelujah that, we're going to have a whole episode on all of these plus minuses that we're going to dig into. So stay tuned through the off season for that because, you know, we're here.
Yeah, no shortage of storylines to get to. Also, we'll take a look at the rest of the NHL playoffs. Maybe who Predators fans should throw their money behind heading into the rest of the postseason, especially in the Western Conference. All of that coming up on today's Locked On Predators podcast. First, though, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. It's the fast-paced game that lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, and let's kick off a season-ending plus minus. You guys who have been listening to the show for quite some time know what the deal is. We will give pluses to things about the season we liked, minuses to things we didn't like or that we want to see improved heading into next season. So, Ann, start us off with a plus.
Always starting with the plus. We are optimists, if nothing else, even in the off season.
Yeah.
My first plus is going to be a very obvious plus, but I think we need to stop and acknowledge Filip Forsberg's amazing season. Filip Forsberg, 82 games, 48 goals. That is a franchise record, 94 points. This is a career best season for Filip Forsberg. And there's a couple things I think that are worth celebrating. Obviously, 48 goals. Huge. I mean, that smashed Matt Duchene's, was it 43? He had 43, I think.
He had 43, yeah.
He had 43. So Filip Forsberg surpassed that by 5. The other thing to think about is, remember Filip Forsberg in like the first dozen games had like some of the highest expected goals for in the entire league, but just wasn't able to finish. So imagine this could be a 50 goal scorer very easily. The other thing I think is worth shouting out, and it's a topic that we discuss every offseason about Filip Forsberg, is he going to be healthy? Filip Forsberg played all 82 games. Now, how many of those games did he skate in morning skate before? We don't need to talk about that because Filip Forsberg don't need no practice.
Yeah.
You know,
he feels like we've unlocked the key to Filip Forsberg's health.
That's just let him be.
Yeah, just let him show up to work.
Let him show up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great season.
And I believe, and this was the first season in which Filip Forsberg played every game or every possible game since 2017.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been a conversation with Forsberg. Can he stay healthy? Very healthy Filip Forsberg, very strong Filip Forsberg, and obviously he's got the scoring touch this season.
Yeah, obviously. And for me, I think this was the Filip Forsberg, and the Filip Forsberg from 2022 as well. But this is the Filip Forsberg that Preds fans were trying to manifest from like 2015 onward, because it was just such a long time where Filip Forsberg got so red hot, at times looked like one of the best scorers in the NHL.
Yes.
And then he would get hurt, and then he would get into a cold snap, or something else would happen, just some inconsistency. And we were always like, okay, this next year is his breakout year. And it just kind of went back and forth for that. And obviously injury problems last year after that breakout 2022. I think it was fair to ask what Preds fans were going to expect from Filip Forsberg moving forward in sort of this new look Nashville Predators franchise. And then he comes out and just, in the majority of Preds games, and Filip Forsberg looked like the best player on the ice.
Yes.
And he did. It should also be noted that he put up these stats against, top lines from other teams as well. So, yeah, I'm with you 100%. Filip Forsberg, definitely something to celebrate for Nashville this year.
All right. What about you? Give me your first plus. What's something that jumped out this season for you that you were like, let's go?
I'm going to loop a couple people into this, Anne, but my plus goes to off-season free agent signings.
Yep, got that. Yes.
Yeah, because remember the talk about what the Preds did this past offseason? Like, what are you doing? This is dumb. Like, why are we throwing a bunch of money in term at old people, guys who haven't been in their prime for a couple of years? Gustav Nyquist this year, 23 goals, 52 assists, 75 points. He had never had more than, I think it was wound up being 54 in a season was his previous career high.
Yeah.
And Gustav Nyquist shattered that. Also became just the fourth Nashville Predators player to have at least 50 or more assists in a season. I'm sorry, the fifth Nashville Predators player to have 50 plus assists in a single season. Joining Roman Josi, who did it twice, Paul Kariya, who did it twice, and also joining Ryan Johansson and Mikael Granlund. So that's good company. Look at Ryan O'Reilly, 26 goals, 43 assists for 69 points. Easily his best season statistically since his 2019 Stanley Cup winning campaign, in which he also won the Conn Smythe that year. I think a lot of people, when the Predators got Ryan O'Reilly, remember, people were linking him to going back to Toronto, going back to, maybe going to Pittsburgh or contender as, this is a guy, his best years are behind him, but plug him into like a third line or something like that, maybe at like a second power play, and you're going to get some value. The Preds plucked him, put him right up there as their 1C. A lot of people were like, that's a bit of a stretch. Never looked back. And you know what, Anne? Screw it. Still don't like this contract, but Luke Schenn, let's talk about him a little bit.
Yeah.
I have to say, did step up in the playoffs. A little bit, played some decently good minutes, didn't make a lot of mistakes. I thought did a really good job of sort of containing Vancouver's big guns while he was out there. Look, we can debate that contract. I still don't think it's great. But you know what? Even he, I think, showed why the Predators signed him at certain moments down the stretch. So, kudos to him too. But yeah, big year for free agent signings, Ann.
Yeah. And you have to wonder, and it's something that, we can dive into in the offseason. How did those free agent signings of Nyquist and Ryan O'Reilly impact Filip Forsberg and vice versa? Because
Yeah.
that combination became just so critical to Nashville's success. And I agree with you about Luke Schenn. And it was hard to get on the Schenn train because we didn't see him for 7 weeks, 6.5, 7 weeks. We'll find out hopefully this afternoon a little bit more about his early season injury. The locker room cleanout, sometimes they finally are a little bit more open about injuries and stuff like that. But Luke Schenn, look, he's not going to set any land speed records. But when you partner him with somebody like Spencer Stastny, what a good defensive pairing, that is for Stastny and for the other defenders, to have somebody like Luke Schenn in the locker room. And I agree with you. I think in the playoffs, he didn't look old. He didn't look out of place. He was an impact player for the defense. So even Luke Schenn, maybe that's what we should call this episode. Even
Luke Schenn.
Hey,
you know what? You celebrate, the big wins wherever you can get them.
Darn right.
And as we mentioned, not all sunshine and rainbows. Nashville Predators had a lot to celebrate, but there's also some serious questions about this team moving forward. And we'll get into them coming up here in just a little bit as we go through some minuses for the season on today's Locked On Predators podcast. First, though, I want to mention today's episode brought to you by Monopoly Go. Game off, everybody. We got to pause here and talk more about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying. You just talked about that. But there's so much stuff in this game that is worth talking about. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. We're talking unique stickers that you can trade with your friends to complete albums for big prizes. You can get cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there are always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, Anne. We are doing plus minus for this past Nashville Predators season. We talked about some pluses. Let's go into the negative realm a little bit. Let's just be, a little bit of a negative Nancy here. What's a minus from you for this past season?
All right, this one hurts my heart, but we have to be honest about it. If we're going to be anything, we're going to be honest here. And my first minus goes to the season of Cody Glass, not to the person, but to the season of Cody Glass. Cody Glass was one of those players at the end of last season. You thought, okay, when Barry Trotz is talking about a youth movement, when he's talking about kind of turning the page in the offseason where he moved Matt Duchene, where he moved Ryan Johansson, you thought, okay, this is going to be the season for Cody Glass to really step forward and take a top 6 role for the Nashville Predators. And man, has he had a rough season, injured, hit in the head with the puck the first game, then dealt with a lower body injury, upper body injury. And then it was just really hard for Cody Glass to find his game and to get back out on the ice. Really was a tough season for him physically. I think mentally he would tell you that this was a very challenging start to the season for him as well. And at that point, you run into a new coach. And one of the things Andrew Brunette talks a lot about is I have to put players out there that I trust. Looked like maybe Cody Glass had not earned his trust. It seemed in a Colorado game where he had a hat trick, you were like, okay, here we go. Cody Glass going to get back in the lineup, be a regular, not going to be healthy scratch anymore. And that just didn't materialize for Glass. Down the stretch when there were some injuries, he wasn't the guy that got the tap on the shoulder to get into the lineup. Free agents, Beauvillier and Zucker, rhymes with Hooker, kind of took the spot that it looked like maybe he would get back in. And so at the end of this season, I just don't think we still have any idea what Cody Glass is capable of. And I think that there are a lot of people in the fan base who don't want to take the time and give him another chance, who feel like this season just was the last opportunity for Glass. It's not. He's got another year on his contract. And let's be honest, there's not a lot of trade value. So I imagine Cody Glass is going to be here next season, but it is going to be pressure on for Cody Glass if he wants an opportunity under Andrew Brunette to be a Nashville Predator.
Yeah. And for me, it's tough because you said obviously he has another year left. And, the Predators, I don't think want to give up on him. But he's also got $2.5 million left to pay next year. And if you're the Nashville Predators, you're going to have to make a decision on this soon, because like that's a big chunk of change to commit to a guy that you don't think may be a part of your team moving forward. I'm just going to go ahead and loop in another quick minus, and that's just the youth in general. Because remember, this was the team when Barry Trotz came in and Andrew Brunette came in, the first thing that Trotz said was, we're going to get a little bit younger. We're going to get a little bit more skilled. And so a lot of people are like, oh my God, finally, like we have a pathway for Phil Tomasino to actually stay up. We have a pathway for Cody Glass to finally get, some top 9 minutes. We have a pathway for, all these exciting players that we drafted, like Joakim Kamel, to come in and, earn a spot in the NHL and contribute right away. And it just didn't work out that way. And, obviously Tomasino struggled to sort of maintain a consistent place in the lineup, went down in Milwaukee. Juuse Saros started the season on the top line, had a very, solid first 2 weeks, and then, was in Milwaukee a couple of months later just because, he struggled to kind of find a place in the lineup. We talked about Cody Glass. Even Luke Evangelista played very well down the stretch, but it took him a while to kind of get going too. It's very clear to me that Barry Trotz is kind of running the strategy of we're just going to put, we're bringing these veterans in, not because, we're just going to plug open spots with veterans. We're bringing veterans in to make these young players compete. We're not just going to say, all right, we're penciling in Phil Tomasino on the second line wing. He's telling Phil Tomasino, you've got to earn a spot on the second line wing. You've got to outplay the veteran who has your spot in order to get in. And I think the disappointment comes from, and that objectively, some of these young players didn't do enough to warrant having consistent spots on this team over, some other veteran players, guys like Kiefer Sherwood and Mark Jankowski.
Yeah. And you look at, we didn't see, like you mentioned, we didn't see Joakim Kamel. We didn't see Fedor Svechkov. Of course, they are still with Milwaukee. Milwaukee plays a playoff game. This is a winner go home game tonight for Milwaukee against the Texas Stars in the AHL playoffs. But even when players were called up, Igor Afanasyev, people were like, bring up Igor, bring up Igor. When Igor got up here, there were a lot of games where he was a healthy scratch. And it really was, you have to compete at this level. We only saw Yaroslav Askarov up here a very short period of time. He did get that shootout win over the Capitals, which was really great, but we didn't get a huge taste of that youth movement. And on the one hand, it's disappointing because that's kind of what we thought we would see. On the other hand, can't really fault Andrew Brunette because at some point you have to put your best team out there. And I think it is a lesson for the Tomasinos, for the Parsonens, for the Cody Glasses, for the Luke Evangelistas. You have to play at a certain level in the NHL. We're not just going to give you a spot. The NHL is not a great place to develop. You got to come here ready. It's a hard road. And Luke Evangelista, who I think people would say had a successful season, that was a hard season for Luke Evangelista. Like, that was not an easy, 82 games of growth.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to take a little bit for all these players to get going. And I got another minus that I want to throw your way.
Yeah.
And that is the future of Dante Fabro.
Gosh, yes.
Because that's another one that I think is worth discussing. Statistically, not bad this season. When him and Yossi were together, statistically one of the best defensive pairs in the entire NHL in terms of just pure defense. When he's on the ice, made a couple of really good plays, look like just having, a solid bottom pair guy last year. But for whatever reason, it feels like it's the same story again. There is something about him that the Nashville Predators just don't trust. I don't know if it's him, the way he plays. I don't know if it's what he's doing off the ice. But for whatever reason, the Nashville Predators are hesitant to put him out there. Lowest average ice time since his 4-game stint in 2018, 2019, where he was signed up right at the end of the season. His ice time has been going down every year since 2020. Obviously he didn't play in the playoffs until Spencer Stastny got hurt, so he wasn't even the number one choice for Andrew Brunette. It's interesting because you just see him doing a lot of things really well, followed up by him just being on the bench for a handful of games. And let's not forget, that the Nashville Predators re-signed him earlier in the season. So he's got another year left on a $2.5 million contract for a guy that Andrew Brunette seemingly doesn't fully trust. And that's an interesting situation next year.
Yeah, I think the blue line, there's going to be some sorting. Like we're going to be getting out the hat from Harry Potter and doing some sorting with this blue line. But it is interesting that this is one of the players they re-signed. Now, Alexander Carrier, UFA. What's going to happen with Alexander Carrier? Spencer Stastny, from all appearances, is going to be an NHL defenseman next season as well. I think he should be, but then you're like, hey, Mark Del Gaizo, what are we doing with some of these other defensemen? Kevin Gravel was recalled for the postseason. There's going to be a lot of sorting with the blue line. And I think it's very interesting that Dante Fabro is on, he has a contract for another year. Will Andrew Brunette get to a point where he trusts him and he is back out on the ice? I don't know. I don't know what's happening right there. It's hard to make sense. It's hard to make sense of what they want to see from him. I know that there were some plays, where maybe he had a turnover or this or that, but it seems like there are some players where that can happen and it doesn't necessarily result in not playing versus others. So what happens with Dante Fabro? I think this offseason is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation to have for the Nashville Predators. I'm sure Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette are going to have some hard conversations regarding that this offseason. More plus minus coming up in a little bit, plus a look at the Western Conference playoffs, now not featuring the Nashville Predators. What should Preds fans cheer for, and who should they put their money behind? Coming up here in just a second.
First, I want to let you know this episode's brought to you by FanDuel. Friends, it is that time of year. It is winner take all time in the NBA and, of course, in the NHL. And FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Hey, do you think you know who's going to win some of these second round matchups in the NHL? You got to check it out on FanDuel. If you are maybe a bigger NBA fan, FanDuel has you covered there as well. So go and check it out. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
All right, and as we look back on the season, do you have any more minuses, or do you want to jump into the last plus?
I just want to throw out one that's just a very soft minus. I almost want to call it a dash, but it's something that I think everybody's talked about. We have to address. And I would say that is Juuse Saros' season. So technically finished with his worst statistical season, but his worst statistical season ended with a .906 save percentage, 2.86 goals against allowed, 3 shutouts. Here's what's interesting. Juuse Saros was pulled 7 times this season. That's the most of any of his previous seasons. And friends, it's hard to complain about a goaltender like Juuse Saros because he is, you know who he is, you know, regardless of statistics. I think the Nashville Predators and the Predators fans know what you have in Juuse Saros. But I think consistency was maybe a little more up and down this season than we're used to. Of course, we know that he is a crock pot, not a microwave. He's a little bit slower start. But even down the stretch, it felt like there were so many more highs and lows from Juuse Saros' game than what we're used to. I don't think he necessarily stole as many games for the Predators. I'm not sure that's a bad thing. I think, you know, relying on that isn't going to get you a Stanley Cup. But I do think it was an interesting season for Juuse Saros. And of course, I think we all know the offseason is going to be filled with talk about where does Barry Trotz go from here when it comes to goaltending. You know, is Juuse Saros going to be back? Is he going to be traded? Is Kevin Lankinen going to be re-signed? Will we see Yaroslav Askarov? And I think this season from Juuse Saros makes it a little bit more complex of a decision for the Nashville Predators. So for me, I just think that is a big storyline. Again, I don't think you can say, man, Juuse Saros was terrible this season, but he just wasn't it wasn't the consistency with which people are used to seeing Saros play. And I think it just leads to a lot of questions about what is Barry Trotz going to do with goaltending.
It's going to be not just for the Nashville Predators, but I think for the NHL, one of the most watched storylines because of, you know, the Predators say, you know what, this is the time to move Juuse Saros. That's, you know, maybe the biggest goaltender on the market that might get traded, you know, maybe since Ryan Miller. You know, it's been that long. So, and with 1 year left on a very team-friendly contract, Preds are going to have to make a decision about their future and goals sooner or later. So to me, that is something, that they're going to watch.
Yeah.
And we can't be all negative, Nancy, right? We have to end on a plus. And I want to give a plus to the Nashville Predators and their fans for a great season. The fans in games 4 and games 6 up until, you know, the final score.
Yeah.
Saw signs of old Bridgestone Arena.
Yes.
And the Nashville Predators over the past few years haven't had a lot to cheer for. Let's be honest. There is just certain things about this team that I think turned maybe some long-term fans off. Maybe the casual fans didn't want to pay close enough attention anymore. And it just seemed like, you know, maybe the fan base and maybe Bridgestone Arena was a shell of its former self. The big thing that we got out of this season and the fact that, you know, we had Filip Forsberg, you know, have this big scoring season, the fact that all these new acquisitions did so well, the fact that this was the highest scoring Nashville Predators team since 2007.
Yeah.
It was just an exciting team to watch. Added, I think, so much excitement back into the fan base. And we went into that playoff series for the first time in a very long time, actually feeling some confidence.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, maybe being proud of where the team was at, maybe actually believing that this team would compete. And you know what? They could, right?
Yes.
Like they lost that Vancouver series, but it wasn't like Colorado in 2022. It wasn't like Carolina in 2021. Heck, it wasn't even like the Dallas series from 2019. It wasn't a bloodbath. It didn't look like the Preds were being outworked. It looked like the Predators belonged in that same arena. Maybe that's why this end of the season hurts so much, is because this was such a big opportunity for Nashville. You know, they, for the most part, look like the better team. They outshot Vancouver. They got more expected goals in this series. They got more high danger chances on net. Vancouver found a way to win, and Nashville didn't. But that's it. It was an exciting time to see this Nashville Predators team, a team that just looked like everything that we had been dying to see for years now. That type of exciting offensive puck control style of hockey that we've seen other teams like Colorado and Tampa and Dallas master over the years. We finally got to see that for our team. And as a result, the fans were back behind this team. Bridgestone Arena was rocking most nights. And it felt like, the excitement around the team was finally back, Ann.
Yeah, it was a really great season. And I agree with you. As disappointing as the postseason loss was, it is very hard to feel horrible about where the Nashville Predators are right now, because they competed with a Vancouver team that finished the season top of the Pacific Division with a lot of offensive weapons that Nashville was able to do a little bit of containment on. And I just think you have to feel good. Like, you have to feel like this is headed in the right direction. It feels like it's headed in the right direction. It's been a Band-Aid. So many offseason moves up to last year felt like Band-Aids. We're going to get back to that, Stanley Cup run with these Band-Aid players added. And it feels like there's a whole new chapter in Nashville. And what a great first chapter this past season has been for the Nashville Predators and for the Predators fans who love this team and who are excited to see what's next. They are excited and ready to invest in this team. And I think Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette really gave fans something to look forward to. It's going to feel like an even longer offseason after such a great season from this team.
Exactly. Unfortunately, it's not the offseason just yet. And we still have some hockey to get to. Now the Nashville Predators are out of it. We're down to 8 teams in the NHL. Who are you putting your money behind right now?
Oh, this is a tough one, because I will say this: both of the series in the West, I think, are going to be fascinating. Yeah. Dallas, Colorado is going to be insane. I can't even begin to figure out how this is going to go. I say that I think Colorado is going to pull this one out, but I think that it is going to be a bloodbath. When you talk about a bloodbath, like, I don't think it's going to be a sweep, but I think it is going to be just an intense, hard, high energy, high emotion series. When it comes to Vancouver and Edmonton, look, here's what's real. One of my dearest friends works for Edmonton, and so I would love to see her win the Stanley Cup. But it's very hard not to cheer for Vancouver. I just got, because there is something comforting about seeing the team that beat your team go all the way. Like, when Colorado swept Nashville, I was like, but it was this future Stanley Cup champions.
Yeah, especially them sweeping the Oilers en route to that.
Yeah, like, you were like, see, it's not just us. But I'm very excited to see Vancouver and Edmonton. I wonder if that series is going to look different, if it's going to open up some for Vancouver. I'm very interested in both these series, but I don't think that they're easy calls. Do you feel like there's pretty obvious winners in these?
No, me and Seth Topal talked about this this morning in the Locked On NHL podcast, if you guys want to listen to that. But these are two series that could go either way. This Dallas-Colorado series, they're so close. Dallas has the advantage in one area. Colorado's got an advantage in the other area. And then it just goes back and forth. And it's just, you break down these two teams and they're just so similar. And they're so deep. And, maybe the two deepest teams left in the entire Stanley Cup playoffs at this point. And I talked to Seth about it last night. And I said, you know what? The winner of that series, they may be the cup favorite. They really might be, because both of them are built for a deep run. I had Dallas winning in 7 games just because I felt like the home ice advantage at the very end might be the thing that tips it. But yeah, for me, that's the winner of that series is going to the Stanley Cup Finals out of the West. And then the other one, it's interesting. I'm with you. Like, I want to see Vancouver do well. For a lot of Canucks fans have been listening in this podcast, and all of them that were, interacting with us have been lovely.
Amazing.
Great fan base. It was awesome to see the atmosphere there. Would love to see good things for there. I just don't know if you could play the style of play that you played against Nashville and have it work against Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
For me, I think Edmonton's winning that series. But yeah, interesting to see.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. I think it just, maybe I'm biased. I think the West is gonna have the best in the second round when you come to series and competition. I think the West is gonna be interesting.
I don't know. Boston looked like a juggernaut last night, and that first Rangers Hurricanes game was a straight up banger. So
yeah, it was good. Yeah, Boston looked great, but I agree with you. I think Dallas, Colorado, I think whoever comes out of that, you really have to like them to hoist the cup. You do.
Yeah, 100%.
We'll see.
Yeah, we will see if the Nashville Predators can, maybe get up in this conversation in a couple of years from now. And let's hope we get there. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked on Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back with an all-new episode tomorrow. We'll see you then.